Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be on this side of the world to join our, I think it's 18th, 19th edition of the JD Edwards Talks. Today, we will have a discussion on low-code, no-code AI-enabled applications. We would like to empower our JD Edwards users to not be afraid to test and to start using better and more tools that would enhance a great potential for your user experience with JD Edwards. We know that some companies may take this like, okay, we're not there, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't look at this, it's not safe for us, but we have the solution for you. So especially if you're on that side that you have not even touched AI applications. So today with me, I have a close friend, even though so far away from Australia, Russell joining me from Rinami. So I say let's kick off a conversation on what next on JD Edwards. So my name is Andrea, and I'm passionate about JD Edwards. I created this series of JD Talks under the Quistor now Broadpin umbrella, and I'm hoping you'll get value of the session. Russell, would you like to say hello to our audience this late evening for you, afternoon for me?
Good afternoon, I think it was for most people.
Yeah.
Or morning. Yep, I need to get myself a new photo. That one's getting a little bit old.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So yes, from Rinami, we've been an Oracle partner now for 16 years, and obviously also a Quistor partner now for I think over 7 years. So, but yeah, we do a lot of work in the JD space, mainly around mobility integration and those types of solutions, as well as some functional work as well.
Yeah. So thank you for joining me, Russell. What we are going to do, introduce a little bit about the companies, what we do nowadays. We've changed from Quistor to Broadpin, the latest Oracle AI World event in Las Vegas. So I want to give you an insight on that. But then we're going to see what's the challenge. How are companies seeing nowadays integrating the advanced technology with JD Edwards, and how are you able to empower your JD Edwards? For that, we are trying to put a little bit more, let's say, consistency and security, especially for companies that are not that connected or well connected into, for example, the Microsoft world. That's what we are going to focus our demo today, and the solution. So the solution can be extended to other cloud solutions all over, but we are going to look at Microsoft in detail for this piece, Microsoft Power Apps. So about Broadpin. So you've been knowing us for Quistor, but for 1 month, right? I think it's about 1 month now. We have rebranded ourselves. We are under Broadpin. This is our entity at this moment. So smoothly, we will turn all our image, all our presence into the Oracle space as Broadpin. Under Broadpin, we have brands like Project Partners, Promatis, Spitz, ITG, and of course Quistor. Quistor mainly focused on JD and Oracle technologies. And all of these partners have a clear focus to deliver Oracle end-to-end solutions, services, products to end customers. And we are servicing worldwide the platform of Oracle applications and technologies, and we are empowering through the let's say specialization of each partner our customers to better consolidate all their Oracle solutions and services into one vendor, and that would be the Broadpin umbrella. So into this ecosystem, we are partnering with third-party partner applications like Rinami is, and we are trying to make sure that we enhance the solution of JD Edwards to its best. I would like to know more about Rinami and to let you know more about Rinami, because we've been working for 7 years, as Russell mentioned, and I think it's still a long way further where we can enhance their solution into the JD Edwards ecosystem.
Well, as I said, we've been around since 2009. I think our focus is just been that. It's always been trying to get the JD Edwards system to be out in the business. It tends to be siloed sometimes with the ERP and the interface and everything. So all the way from when we started, we really focused on integration and mobile solutions and those types of products that make the JD system a little bit more user-friendly, but also get it to be further out on the edge of the business where transactions are actually occurring, I guess, is our focus. So, and obviously there's been a lot of change in JD in that time, a lot of change in the technology stack, and things are moving quite quickly at the moment in this space, and we're obviously trying to make that process as easy as possible. Hence, this topic we've got today is really focused on how we can do the types of integrations that customers are wanting to do at the present time, but to do it securely, because that's always the challenge that comes up when you're dealing with corporate systems like this.
Indeed, it is, and we have been presenting to our customers chatbots, so Copilot chatbots that connect to JD Edwards, and we are driving the chatbot itself through Power Automate within the Microsoft tooling, but what we've seen is a challenge for our customers, actually, at the end of the day, to really understand how that works and how to make sure that the security is enhanced on both ends. So this is why for the customers who do not have, especially who do not have a Microsoft team on site, we do have a platform.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that, as I said, the challenge with it is that people want to do these types of solutions, and there's lots of stuff around how to use now Orchestrator and AIS within JDE, but yeah, the challenge is that you need to do these things securely, and you can't expose, the business to unnecessary risk when it comes to integration. So a lot of that stuff can be quite complicated, and there's a lot of tools around, but as I said, trying to get stuff that will work specifically with JD and how to set that up can take a fair bit of technical knowledge. So we're trying to make that process easier and ensure the security is maintained while you can take advantage of the types of tools that Microsoft and Amazon and Google and Oracle and so forth are putting out in the market now.
But let's try to see how advanced actually people are, or if they have started the process altogether. So we're going to have a short poll right now. How advanced is your company in using Microsoft Power Platform products like Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, or Power Virtual Agents? We are looking like quite advanced, or maybe juniors just investigating, interested to learn more, or it's off limit at this stage for our company. So let's try to submit votes and see where we stand. Okay, so the majority of the personas here in today's session are quite juniors, investigating, and of course interested to learn more. So maybe it will be a nice learning experience, Russell. 29% are quite advanced, so already implemented in certain business areas and starting using them. But what is nice to see that it's not an off limit, so they don't have corporate strategy that really says a full no to AI. So that's very nice to hear.
Yep. Well, so we'll touch on a number of parts of the Power Apps platform. It's just, again, it's a reference platform, so obviously there's a number of vendors in the market, but most customers are running within the Microsoft ecosystem in some form, so it gives an easy point of reference to continue to work on it. So I think, obviously solutions don't come about on their own. They need to have a problem to solve. And so what we've seen with, and I think Quizstore have seen this as well, with integration, is that obviously there's been a lot of work on the JD Edwards side around AIS and the orchestrator and making the JD system accessible from integration. The issue that we look at is that AIS in of itself is not an edge integration solution. It's not designed to be effectively exposed to the internet. It doesn't have the types of controls and security features that you would expect from an API solution that is going to be used or effectively accessible from public networks. And so therefore other tools come into play. Obviously Oracle have got API gateways, and Microsoft have got API management, and Google have got Apigee, and AWS have got their tools and those sorts of things. And they all effectively fit a type of solution. The issue with all of those tools, even the Oracle tools, is they're not particularly JD Edwards aware. And the issue that presents then is it can be complicated to set them up in a way that makes sense. It can be quite a significant part of a project to try and get integration going. So where we're coming at this now is to say, well, that is the problem, is that how can you do these types of projects? Because the reality is what we've seen is that some customers, JD Edwards customers, have put their AIS system effectively on public networks to be able to achieve integration. Or, as I said, they've spent a lot of time trying to do the setup. And I think, sort of recent reference, we've had this hack that's been carried out last month against Oracle e-business systems. It's actually been going on since July, which is really a highlight of why ERPs and core business systems should not be accessible directly. You need to have a layer of protection in there. So that's what we're really focused on. But obviously that then allows for quite, if you can do it correctly, it can then expose your system to a lot of platforms and products, as I said, and we'll look at the Power App solutions today.
Great. Let's see now, Russell, how well integrated already are these customers that have responded, yes, juniors or advanced, how well that solution is integrated to JD Edwards. So we'll run another poll just to get an idea if you are integrating it or not already. So let's look at this. We were hoping that you have an API management platform, or maybe you don't, or just to see if you are or not integrated. Okay. So manual setup. And some of them have API management platform. A little majority of them is open to the internet, and 0% have not yet integrated to JD Edwards. So interesting results. Let's see how we change from a manual setup maybe to an API management platform, a platform that could be a Rinami one. Oh, fast and forward. Yes.
Yeah. So, following on from the topic, I guess what we've focused on is really to provide an API manager, an API gateway solution specifically for JD Edwards. It still integrates in with your broader integration platforms that you may be using, but we're really focused on the JDE ecosystem. So what that allows us, what it's really focused on is that you get the normal type of API security mechanisms. You've got rate limiting, you've got payload verification, things like that, audiences, API controls, but also it specifically handles the JD types of things. So it allows you to control which orchestrations are exposed to which clients. If you want to have a certain orchestration available only to a certain mobile application, or you're using, a middleware product like Dell Boomi or Talend, and you only want certain orchestrations to be accessible from that, even though they may be using a service account that has broad access across the JD system. That's what we're really focused on, making that process really simple. And the authentication and sign on and all that sort of stuff is handled in a standardized way for API clients. We're also conscious that JDE customers are global, so we do handle things like data sovereignty and those sorts of things. So if you are based in Europe, we can ensure that everything that's set up stays within European area. If you're in North America, sits in North America. If in the Asia Pacific region, sits in Australia. So we handle that sort of stuff as well. So that's what we're really going to look at, but obviously we're going to tie that in with how that then can be leveraged within the Microsoft environment specifically.
Nice. So as Russell moves forward, describes a little bit about the solution itself, so the actual steps, and we'll enter a demo. I do encourage you to use the chat to address questions, or we have a questionnaire there. Feel comfortable to make, let's say, Russell show you what you're interested in seeing, because I've seen some very cool examples on how easy it is. But that easiness also needs to be translated in your business terms as well. So let's have a look on the steps first. So it sounds easy, only 6 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's it. And we have it, it's all there. But I think going one by one will give us an idea of what exactly we're set to do.
Yeah, so as I said, we try to step this out so it makes logical sense, and people can obviously see the components that make up a solution like this that you can deploy securely without it being too overwhelming. So we'll go through this. We're obviously not going to go through it in lots of detail within this session. Haven't got time, but you'll get a good feel for what's required to get something up and running fairly quickly. So within, again, Microsoft environment specifically, and within Entra, which everyone would have used to have known as Azure AD and Identity, sometimes called, you would set up effectively what's known as an enterprise application. And so that allows you to control authentication and authorization. Who's allowed to use that integration endpoint? You could have one for the entire organization, or you can get very granular and have, this is the production release of a particular client application, and here's the development, and here's training, and you can go to that level. It's really how you want to design and structure it. But that effectively was how you then control the access and authentication process. Once that's established, and we'll step through these reasonably quickly, you set up on the Kantara side, which is the product that we provide, which is the gateway. You effectively map that enterprise application in, so we know how authentication will work. You also tie that in with your JD Edwards system. So then that's how it knows how to talk to AIS. Our solution does support single sign-on for the JAS servers. So if you just want to have a straight HTML client as well, you can use it for that purpose. But we're obviously going to focus on how to use AIS today. So that'll basically wire it in. You need to provide access onto JDE. The benefit of that, obviously, is you're not providing public access. You set up a secure connection to your AIS services. We do support load balancing functionality. If you want to run your own load balancers in front of multiple JAS and AIS servers, that's also supported. You can do it either way. And once that's done, then we can go onto the Microsoft side and actually set up the connection, which is really just publishing orchestrations or data services, or however you want to access it, so that can be consumed. Again, those connections can be reused across multiple Power Apps solutions. They don't have to be unique to each one. And then once you've got that, you effectively got all the plumbing done, you can go into Power Apps. And we'll talk a little bit about both the application development, but also specifically around the AI tools that Microsoft's made available within there. So we're going to do a quick demonstration on effectively document OCR, but with an AI process where we don't have to have too much human involvement in a transaction. We'll just go through a fairly simple purchase order receiving document, but we'll sort of demonstrate what that looks like. And then again, within the Microsoft environment, you can then control how these applications are published. So whether you want to publish them to mobile devices, whether you want to publish them as Teams, embedded applications, if you just want standalone desktop within web pages and that sort of thing. So the Power Apps platform gives you a fairly broad selection, but that's pretty much it. There's not too much else to it. There will be some sort of prerequisite stuff that we're not going to touch on today, like you would do your JDE single sign-on setup, but that's again all standardized stuff. There's nothing nothing special about that, so we don't need to cover all the.
That's an easy, once you're post release 24, that's an easy turn on for JD Edwards, the single sign on. And what I've seen at the very end, it's also training the model that you're putting in place. So an insight on that.
So we'll talk a little bit about the AI components. Again, you know, a lot of this stuff has gotten quite commoditized quite quickly. So how you can use the AI hub in Microsoft specifically and tailor it to your specific use cases. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
So the following slides we will share to the audience, but I think the best way is to get actually into a demo and go step by step in a demo and see how this works in real life. Again, during the demo, we can address questions to Russell. I'll be here to coordinate that. So make sure that you keep asking what you'd like to see next.
Yep. So I'll share. I'll sort of jump again. I'm not going to go through all the nuts and bolts of this. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. But this stuff is all very standard. There's nothing in here that's specific that you would need to do out of the ordinary for any of these setups. So within the Microsoft environment, you have basically an application registration, which is what this is showing. And what I might do is I'll actually jump to a screen share. Be a little bit easier. I assume that's coming through all right.
Yes, we are seeing your screen now.
Yep. So obviously, here's one we prepared earlier. We're not going to go and bake the whole cake right now. So this is just a demonstration application that's been set up. So you can leave these up as you want. The important piece of information we'll have once it's set up is just our application ID. You can set up API permissions and controls if you want. So that's really about saying if you want to have access within your apps to a raft of Microsoft endpoints, you know, if you want access to SharePoint or you want access to Teams or email or all those sorts of things, you can sort of control those things as well. We set up our authentication methods for single sign-on, but again, this is all fairly vanilla Microsoft type setup process. Once you've got that piece set up, what you would do is on our side, within our tenancy, you set up a corresponding gateway environment. So this, again, there's a lot of pieces that you can control. I guess the really important parts are, in this case, we're going to do an OAuth 2 sign on. If you want to do SAML or those types of providers, you can, but we'll focus on an OAuth 2 for this one. We have a prefix, which is really just our unique URL that we'll use. And then we get into some JDE specific pieces. So this is really where it's trying to make the JDE setup quite simple. So you can see here, we're going to use the JWT features. I think is a 927 tool, somewhere around there, that one was actually introduced. You can use PS token and those sorts of things as well. So we do support all the JDE tools to a point. So again, we've got a JDE environment. Everyone should be familiar with that. We've got our single sign-on JDE specific setup, which is our node trust. We can use service accounts, and this is really around setting up role security within JDE. And then this is where our Microsoft configuration would be pulled in. So again, these are all just standard setup. The important piece is we've got our unique URL that will be used, that will be publicly accessible. That comes from this prefix. And then we get into the JDE system itself. So what this is allowing us to do is to have as many nodes, which would, in this case, would be AIS servers. I've just got the one obviously set up here. So that can be a load balancer that sits on your network, or again, if you want to have direct connections into AIS servers, that's fine. And again, if you've got specific requirements around your IT security for request and response header rewrites, health checks for load balancing, persistence structure, that sort of thing. You can set those up here. Don't need any of it, but they are all available for customers depending on your specific requirements for your network. Likewise, Jazz connections are supported. Likewise, if we want to use the studio, and then provisioning tokens, which allows us to do granular authentication and security for our JDE users. So that process there effectively wires us from the Microsoft authentication authorization layer onto now being able to access the JDE system. And effectively, if you do those two steps and you've got the JDE side set up, I can type in the URL that I've published up here and it will sign me into the JDE system. And it knows who I am based on my Microsoft account. Excuse the slightly odd power form that I've got loaded at the moment. So that sort of is the process to get a login, and it's that login here that we're coming via this URL is using my Microsoft credentials to authenticate, and then control as an authorization at the gateway level, and that will then log into JDE with my account. And that's pretty much that setup completed. So now that we've got access, the next part is actually jumping over to the Microsoft side. So effectively, as I said in those steps, we then need to set up a connection into JDE, or sorry, a connection that Microsoft can use. So again, this is just a straight standard setup that Microsoft has.
Mm-hmm.
You can use Swagger pull downs. We're going to do this a little bit manually. But again, what you'll see here is pretty simple. We've got an endpoint. In this scenario, we're just going to use the orchestrator for our session. So we put that as our base connection. That's our custom URL. We see it's secure. We can do icons and those sorts of things if we need to. And then we set up our security, which is a really important piece. So again, this is quite native. We're using Azure Active Directory. So obviously there's a whole bunch of stuff that then preset. You grab your secret that you would have generated on the Microsoft side. And then that's how you sort of finish out your setup. We've specifically said we want to be able to run AIS services from this, which is what's known as our scope. So again, that's just set up on the endpoint authentication for our enterprise app. So once that setup is done, we then get into the actual detail, which is setting up our orchestrations. So that's what these are here. So this is an orchestration that we've obviously defined for reading a purchase order, ready for a receipt. We can give it a name and a description, and we then would then do an import from that endpoint, which would actually pull the payload in for us. And that then says these are the input fields that are required. With Power Apps and all the low-code types of solutions, obviously you can go in and get quite detailed and do specific requirements around, quote, you can do default values, you can have overrides, you can have dynamic lists, all those sorts of things. So you can do quite a few things with different inputs that are required. This is, again, it's just going to go straight into an orchestration execution. And then likewise, we would effectively run a test transaction and that would populate our outputs. So that would then be saying, okay, well, these are all the fields that are going to come back from the orchestration. So these, as you may recognize them, are just going to be columns from a grid row. So you actually know which grid row you're dealing with, and then you know the line numbers and locations and items. So that's sort of our worked example where it's pulling effectively the PO receipt screen out. If anyone's actually sort of used to integrating with JDE, you'll know actually doing a PO receipt can be quite complicated because of the way that JDE mechanically transacts this. So this is really just also demonstrate that you can do a fairly complicated transaction from an integration perspective without too much pain. So as I said, we've broken this into two orchestrations, one to pull the data, and then the second one is going to process. We're not going to require a person to do anything other than scan a document, so we'll get to that piece in a minute. But these are our orchestrations that we've made available. And then from there, if we do want to, we can do more coding if we want to get down to that level and manipulate data and make changes and all those sorts of things. We don't need that for this demonstration. And lastly, we can test our functions. So if I want to, I can basically sign on. So this will use that connection that I've got. And then I can hit the test operation, and assuming my connection is still current, it's a few days old now, that will run the transaction for me. So what it will show me just as I build this is it will show me the request that it's sent. So this is the input, obviously filtering on a particular purchase order, also telling it which version of PO receipt and JDE I want to use, and my response that came back. So yes, it found the order, and then here are the lines that it found in the grid. So this is just straight JDE orchestration going through. But the important part of it is that we've authenticated via Microsoft Azure to be able to do that. That's what this connection up here is that was generated a few days ago. That's what allows us to do that transaction as that user. Now, that process is set up. As I was saying before, and I'll look at another connection that we've got, we allow you to get quite granular with how you want to control these orchestrations, for example. So as opposed to just saying, yes, you're allowed access to the AIS server, if I come back into here and look at my access controls, I can actually come in here and make decisions around what's available. So in this scenario, I might choose to lock all orchestrations out and then allow certain orchestrations to be executed. I can control all of the JDE endpoints. So in this scenario, for example, the orchestrator in more recent releases allows you to execute business functions. I don't want anyone executing business functions directly. So therefore, this is effectively denied to all users, irrespective of their permissions. But data services, I've allowed everyone to use data services. Again, you can control some of this stuff with JDE security. You can't control business function access, for example, with JDE security.
But in JDE, you have roles, and in Microsoft, you have groups. How do you work hand in hand?
So you can effectively choose either or. So in this scenario, this is a Microsoft security group. So effectively what I'm saying is that anyone that is a Rinami employee is allowed to execute that orchestration. No one else is. So they would have to be in that. So this is loading. These are the only groups that are allowed to access this environment that we've configured. So there's 3 security groups on the Microsoft side. If I want to control access just purely from the Microsoft security group perspective, none of this information sits on JDE, doesn't need to. I can do that. Or alternatively, I can load the JDE roles and control access via a JDE role layer if I want to do that. Or I can combine the two together if I want to get confusing, not typically recommended. So this allows you to basically say, well, you have to be either in this role to execute it. And again, remembering this is in the context of this application. So if I want to have different security for a different application, I can set up another environment, and that'll allow me to then say, okay, well, if I'm coming in from a certain mobile application, I'm allowed to create work requests. If I come from another one, even though I as a user have permission to do that within JDE, I'm not actually able to execute that function unless I'm coming from the correct client. So that's what this is really designed to do. And as I said, you can see these are all specific things around JDE. Am I allowed web access? Am I allowed studio access?
Yeah.
Can I run reports? Do I get notifications, messaging? You get the idea. Can I write logs? All those sorts of things. So it's very JDE centric, and you don't have to go through the complicated setup you would have to do in a Microsoft API management, for example. You would not need to set up policies. Policies themselves are complicated to set up around how do I do an inspection on the payload to say, yes, I can run this business function, but not that one. Those sorts of things get very difficult. Again, because the platform is JDE aware, it filters orchestration. So it knows the structure of and validates the structure of an orchestration request. If you send something that's not a valid orchestration request, it never makes it to the AIS server. Because again, that's one of the things that the AIS servers handle quite poorly. They do not handle malformed requests very well. For example, they will write malformed requests to database as a log entry so that you get the management dashboard that they've introduced. It looks nice, but as an implementation, it's pretty poor, really. You shouldn't be writing full payloads to database just because someone sent it to you, because it doesn't even matter if it's correctly structured or not. The system will write it out. So the intent of this is to filter all of those sorts of things. And again, there's rate limiting, all those sorts of features that you would expect from an API gateway. But that process of control just allows us to ensure that any orchestrations in here, if we want them to be locked out, we can at a gateway level if that's what we require. So
one question regarding the security. Does it override the JD orchestration security, or is it an additional layer?
It's an additional layer. So, and again, what we tend to find with customers is that the layers of security within Orchestrator get to be a little bit complicated, and therefore people tend to pare them back. So a really simple example of that is if what we'll commonly see is that orchestrations, they may use JD roles to control access to, but customers don't necessarily control access to logic extensions or service requests, because then it gets really hard. So then they tend to make those a lot more open and can be executed outside. Now, a lot of those service requests you can actually execute directly if you have access to the AIS server, which you don't want people doing. So again, and also JD security, as everyone's aware, can be quite convoluted in terms of people are combining multiple roles together. It's not just a straight role mapping. So that's where we've sort of taken the approach that says, well, if you don't want to use the JD security model as such, and people are more comfortable with adding people to and controlling their access to IDP or their identity provider. So whether it's Microsoft or Oracle, or Google, whichever one you want to use, in this case, Microsoft, you can control their access to what they're allowed to run just from their Microsoft account setup. You don't have to go through then convoluted JD. But if you want to, you can certainly use the JD roles. But yes, it does not bypass JD security. So if the user cannot execute the orchestration on the JD side, irrespective of what you put up here, they are going to get a permission failure when they try to use that connection.
Correct.
So once we have a connection, as I said, we can use that however we want. We can have lots of different connections with just a few number of operations. If you want to make big connections with lots of different options, you can do that too. That's really up to how you want to design your solutions. From that, we then can get into having an application. Now, I'm not going to go through all the, as I said, the ins and outs of this. There are obviously a number of low-code products on the market. There are some JD specific low-code products on the market with understanding of how orchestrations work. The reality is if you start looking at something like Power Apps, or again, if you look at products from Microsoft, they've got a bunch of stuff. Google, they've got a bunch of stuff that's come out even recently around building these types of products. There's again a raft of solutions on the market. The benefit of these is that they are quite powerful in terms of what you can actually build. So the layouts, design, if you want to go down that part, and obviously when we start dealing with things like AI builders that they're embedding in these solutions now, so receipt processes and text recognition and all those sorts of things, as well as being able to do just your normal barcode reading and measuring and cameras and augmented reality. And there's just a raft of things. It's a fast moving space. Obviously, Microsoft doing a lot of work with OpenAI and Copilot, so that there's now Copilot Studios. You can basically say, please build me an application that does this thing, and it will start building the application for you. If the connector is available to it, the AI engine can read the connector and try to understand what it does. So therefore, in context, start to build up these solutions. What we've done with this quick example product is to bring in something from the hub, which is in the Microsoft stack. So we've basically brought in the hub as well as our connector. So this is our connector that we just defined before that allows us to transact with the data. And then we've got the invoice processing component that we've brought in. And I may just jump back, Andrea, to the slide and jump to the AI slides rather than try and do it live because it's a little bit confusing sometimes. And I'll just jump. Yeah. So this is just information about what we've just gone through. Don't need to cover all that off again, but just for context for anyone that's coming through. This is effectively the process that we've gone through, and we're going to shortly demonstrate this. So there are pre-canned AI models that you can pick up from Microsoft in the AI Builder, or you can then start defining your own. So in this case, we've done quite a simple, effectively receipt or delivery docket parsing solution. So again, what you're doing is you're doing a model training exercise to build up your weights. So in this case, you know, you can throw a bunch of different delivery dockets, purchase order receipt dockets, whatever you want to call them, at it and start basically training the model. And it will go through, and as you put more threads content to it, it will start pulling out its results, and it will actually go through that process. So again, if you want to put the more receipts you want to scan and sort of show to it, the better it will get. But it doesn't take a lot of training with these models. You can actually do it with quite a small data set and then start getting fairly accurate processing. So this is really about, as I said, just training it to say, well, when we look at a document that's come in, it's going to be in this rough structure, and this is where you're going to find different pieces of information that we want. And as from here, we can then add documents to the collection and effectively get the training up to where you want. So you can tune these types of solutions quite quickly around those types of things. Obviously, if your documents are very structured, the training is simpler. If you're very open, you're going to then go through that process of saying, well, here's different variations of the same thing. But it is a lot easier than the older sort of, you know, AP workflow tools that people were used to, that you were doing a lot of training and, you know, a lot of mapping and getting samples and all those sorts of things in the older character recognition type tools. This again is just giving it different samples, giving it some guidance, and then it should start processing for you. And that's what's built into this application.
So it's a sort of advanced document understanding.
Yeah, and as I said, there are pre-trained models that are available. So a really simple example that they have is expense management. If you're going to do expense management, there's pre-trained receipt scanners. So it will effectively go through and scan a receipt, and it can categorize. It's not just a simple text reader. It can look at a receipt and say, well, that looks like a restaurant. Or it can look at another receipt and say, well, that looks like a fuel station and you've paid for fuel. So it can actually identify the type and start cataloging and categorizing content for you. And again, if you want to use the standard ones, you can. If you want to train your own, you can go through that training process and set them up. It's really up to how you want to implement those types of tools. And again, the more you use them, the better they get in theory.
Can you show us the scan now to see how it looks like exactly?
Yep.
The tool.
I can. So if I come, let me just get the application up. I'll wake it up. So let me know if that's come through all right.
Yeah.
So this is just that application. Obviously, the user interface is quite simplistic. We're not here to do Win Design Awards today. If you want to get funky with it, you can. But effectively, what we've done is we've just added that engine at the top. So if I click on the Analyze button, it will open my camera for me. This is running live. I hope the lag's not too bad.
No.
We've got it. We click the button. Take a photo, go, yep, that's in focus. So it should be able to read it, hopefully, and click the OK button. And so what this is going to do is it's going to authenticate as my user against the JD system. It's going to scan that document, identify out of it, you know, the document is in the purchase order number that it relates to, the lines that are on it, which you can see here. the address, and it's actually processing the receipt as well. So we don't have to push another button, and you can come back and generate receipt 1211. So it's identified the 2 lines that were on that delivery docket and processed the receipt as one transaction. So I haven't had to
When we
go through.
see in JD Edwards the receipt being processed?
Yep, so that 1211, all things being equal, there should now be, if we go good old procurement, receipt inquiry, stick our receipt number in, and that's the receipt for the 2 lines. So line 1 and line 3 that were on that order, we only had 1 delivered of each line. So that's that receipt document that is just generated then. So you'll be able to see, hopefully on here. So date updated, obviously I'm in the future being in Australia. So it's now the 18th of November. I may need to zoom in a bit, but that's when the transaction was just occurred.
It's our tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, but I'm in the future in Australia, so it's now Tuesday.
Yeah.
So that's basically it. I mean, it's a very simple process from here, but obviously that's gone through and executed without, I haven't had to enter any details. It's done a scan. Again, you know, when you get into the detail of the flow, you can then start pulling in Power Apps and flows. So you can do automate, you can send it for approval if you want to. You can have attachments, so I can pick up the image that I've captured for that scan and attach that to the purchase order, for example, as a process in that flow as well. So you have,
and it will be stored in JD Edwards.
Yeah. So, you know, a really simple way that you would do it, the way that I would implement it, would be effectively it would scan the document, read the data, process the receipt. It would also attach that image to or within SharePoint, so you can catalog it, add metadata within SharePoint, so the image is there, and then write the SharePoint link back into the purchase order record in JDE, so that you can, when you're in JDE, you can bring up that receipt or delivery docket as part of the process. So that's, none of that is particularly complicated. If I do another really simple example, this is not a AI driven app at the moment, but I may as well do it. So if I share my screen, another really simple application here. I don't have a barcode with me, so I can't run the barcode scanner, but the barcode scanner, if I ran it, again, it's just a standard widget that's on the Power Apps selection. I don't have to do anything to get it to work. I just don't have a barcode. So if I scan the barcode, you know, which would be an asset number, again, I can use AI to read license plates. I can read asset identifiers, all those sorts of things if I want to use those types of tools now. This is, you know, gone and found a vehicle. I want to create a work request for it. This is validating some information. It's got my priorities. I can give it a, just call it quick description. Oops, can't spell. Again, if I wanted to talk to it, I could talk to it, those sorts of things as well. Obviously, voice recognition, those types of solutions are pretty simplistic now, but I won't do that. And hit the create button. Now, this is not particularly sophisticated app again, so this is going to go away, create a work order, attach the text to it, and in this case, it's just returned an order number back to me. But again, I can go into the JD system. This will now be a maintenance exercise. Come on. Get on a maintenance work order, and the work order number generated was 1290. So I'll just put that in here. So there's our quick description. Little things to make life easier. We've converted it to all caps because we've got a case sensitive system. We don't want lower case, so we can do those types of things. Go into the work order. Again, it's been created in the future because that's where I am. It's been created by myself because that's who's logged in to my Microsoft account. It's mapped through to my JD Edwards account. So it knows who's created the order. I've made a maintenance request. And then I've got my more detailed description attachment. Again, if I wanted to take photos, I can upload photos through the orchestration as well. But I don't have that set up on here, so you can see there's a timestamp of when I did the transaction up there as well with my JDE user. So these are just obviously different variations of the same concept. And these applications can be published within Teams. They don't have to be phone-based. As I said, if you want to do, we have conversations with customers about e-forms quite frequently. You know, people are looking for different e-forms products, and there's always different compromises. If you have more complicated forms that you want to build that are doing more detailed products, that's where Power Apps can actually be quite an efficient tool for that. So you can build very specific forms, very specific questions, lots of options, validation within JDE, all those types of things if you want to do that. And then again, it can go into Power Automate. It can send approval requests to people's teams, you know, send messages. All of those tools now become available. And again, what we're really focused on is let's make the integration with JDE as simple as possible, but still secure. We're not exposing AIS to the internet. We're not exposing all those endpoints. We've got all those controls in place, but we can do it quickly. And then once we've got it set up and running, as I said, it knows who you are. It controls access via the JDE. So
I would see it as an enhanced insurance policy to your connection to outside the AI world. And
I mean, the reality of it is that if you, for example, have a user that can access AIS, and a lot of customers are just using username and password, and they can therefore see the business function endpoint, you're very exposed because there are business functions within JD that will change passwords, for example. You can reset a password by executing a business function for any user. There is no control.
But just to get back to security a bit, because what we have been doing when exposing the chatbot functionality, our colleagues were enhancing UDOs, you know, proper UDOs to actually control the security in JD AdWords. But again, you have here the option to map and add another layer with the Microsoft groups, which we are not able to control in the manual, let's say, effort.
Yeah.
One question we have is that when it comes to UDOs, in your solution design, you put the UDOs on start public and then manage the security with the Kantara tool, right?
It's up to the business, absolutely. So yes, if you want to effectively abstract out and say, okay, I mean, obviously you still got to be considerate of what's in JDE. So if I look in the JDE system, for example, you still have to be aware if customers are coming into this component, or your users are coming to this component, and you've got like this thing here is wired into UDOs. It's going to be my JDE role that's going to kick in this process. So I seem to have frozen up here on my screen Zoom. Yeah, so you're going to have scenarios where you're not going to want to have everything just open, but it also means you don't have to get really complicated and granular with your different structures. So again, things like logic extensions, service requests, you may make those start public because it's a lot easier to control, knowing that they cannot execute those endpoints without it being active on here. So I can quite comfortably come in and turn off data services and turn off form services and turn off the information like default config services and not allow logs to be written and decide which media object types I want to add. So if I want to have a particular service name, I can put that in here and only allow that media service. So it gives you that control of the API that IT security expects. But again, it's very JD aware. So, you know, like orchestrations aren't too hard to control because the orchestration name is in the URL. But if you're trying to control data services or functions, a lot of that's in the payload. And therefore you have to build quite complicated policies, and they're quite complicated to maintain going forward in the API gateway type tools. This again allows you to do very JD native things and say, I just want to run that particular orchestration and I have to be this user. Because if I turn that off now, that application that I've got, that loaded up equipment information will give me a permission denied error and I won't be able to use it. Even though I can log into the app, I wouldn't be able to execute that function if I turn it off within this interface.
Okay. Because we have very few minutes left, I want to also see, okay, we may be interested, but how much exactly does it cost? And I know that you have prepared a special gift, let's say, for our JD Edwards community, even though people that have registered and may want to see the recording, they will also, that were not here today with us, they will also be able to get this offer. So
Yep.
tell us what's
okay,
in
so
it.
from a solution pricing perspective, we don't control by user or anything like that. So it's as many users as you want to have on there. It's really just transaction based, and then feature based. So again, from an API perspective, we're talking about 1 million transactions a month, which is fairly high. You'd be fairly busy even at that level. The standard version, you can control access to the different endpoint services. You can't control down to individual components or UDOs. That's in the premium layer. And you don't get the Jazz single sign-on studio. So that's sort of the standard layer. And then premium is really as many transactions. You're going to have to be a very, very heavy user to be higher than that. And that then gives you the ability to do the granular security. You can turn on single sign-on for your Jazz or HTML servers if you want to integrate with Studio, those sorts of things. I mean, Studio, again, we wouldn't really recommend that be on the internet, but if you have a reason to, for remote access reasons, that you can do that. So that's sort of that process of what you get in high level. And obviously, if there's something you really want, so the enterprise stuff is more around implementation support services are part of that to be able to, well, how do I structure this? What makes sense from, even if it's on the Microsoft side around implementing these tools. But yeah, that's what we've got at the moment. And then at the moment, we're obviously coming into this fairly new in this process. So we're offering that the premium solutions available effectively at the standard pricing at this stage, and also for customers that do want to evaluate the product, you can do that without any risks. So set up the tenancy. Obviously, you can choose. We do support multi-region tenants if you do require that. So if you are multinational and you want to have different configurations within different geographic regions, we allow for that. Or obviously, again, if you decided that you're based in Europe and you want to have everything completely based in Europe, then you can configure it for that process. It's really up to the customer. So.
I think the first step in this is take a trial, test it, see how it works, see how easy it is to cooperate with Russell's team, ourselves here in Europe. So we are enhancing this connection with Rinami, and the best thing would be to try it on. So it's like opening Pandora's box with the Power Apps, and the business. It's your business. You understand it much better than we will ever do, but we would be able to translate the power of these tools and to how to enhance these tools to respond and to automate your business processes. So at the end of the day, the decision, it's in our customers' hands, and we are keen to see if there's any interest and to continue inspiring them, right? That's the idea. We learn as we go ahead. We learn from your business and we develop new ideas for other customers. So thank you very much, Russell, for staying so late at night. And I'm looking forward to continue conversation jointly with you and to see how to enhance this solution to our audience.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It's I'll head off to bed shortly.
Yes. One more thing to say is that we have an applications are limited days coming soon. We have two sessions, one in Birmingham, UK, and another one in Paris on December 1st and December 4th. We will be bringing Q, our JD Edwards robot, that will speak to our audience there. We will be able, we connected Q through Copilot with JD Edwards. Of course, there's Llama. There's a lot of technology built in Q, but Q will be able to you'll be able to ask you to order some bikes for you or to move some bikes from one warehouse to another. So come and see us, and our marketing team will send you shortly after this event, after this webinar, we'll send you the details of how you can get access to Birmingham, especially because it's a very large conference. It's the UK user group conference, and we have free spots for you if you're interested to join us there. So I think it's more to AI than just what we've mentioned this evening, but yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and I hope you'll continuously challenge us to bring more ideas to the JD Talks.
Thank you.
Bye.